good? Okay. Then I guess we're ready to start. Okay, guys, I think we're ready to start. So can we have a little quiet? Good. Okay. I think most of you probably know me. I'm Randy, WA2RMZ, and I'm going to be our first presenter, which is going to be just really quickly, because I don't have a lot to talk about. Most of you used to me talking about Dstar. If you want to know about Dstar, come see us in the cafeteria. We'll talk to you about Dstar in there. Today we're going to talk mostly about Fusion, the new digital stuff. Okay? Helping me today is Scott, and who's doing most of our presentation is Chris Wilson, N0CSW from Yaesu. So he is the expert on Fusion. So if you got lots of Fusion questions, you can talk to him. And again, he'll be set up in the cafeteria next to us, and we'll be answering Fusion questions. We actually have all the different Fusion radios there to show, literature to pick up, other goodies and stuff like that. We also have available for people that are here, hats, and sometime during the presentation, Gene and Chuck are going to be bringing around coupons for a raffle. We're going to be raffling off a Yaesu FT1XD Fusion radio provided to us by Yaesu. Okay, so into what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to talk a little about the Central Jersey Digital Group and what we do, and then I'm going to turn it over to Chris for the Fusion talk. So Central Jersey Digital Group, we've actually changed our name. Most of you might have known us as the Central Jersey Dstar Group, but recently we've added a few more things, so we had to change our name. We are now supporting in the Dstar arena NJ2DG, which is in Martinsville, and it hits a full stack of all the different Dstar radios. The W2DGL repeater, which is in Cedar Grove, which has a 2 meter and 1.2 gig voice, and the Empire Machine K2DIG, which many of you out here probably that were Dstar users early on were playing with. We also support Reflector 20. So those of you that keep hearing about Reflector 20, Scott is the maintainer of that. So we can answer questions about any of those repeaters or the reflector. Our new stuff, we now have a DMR repeater within our group, K1DO. It's a New Jersey Turbo network. And then we have our newest radios, which are the Yaesu Fusion repeaters. There's one at Martinsville under the call sign NJ2DG, and our frequency is 441.400. And it's really not in Martinsville yet. It's still currently at my house, so it only has a very limited range on it. But within the next 2 weeks, we should have it up at the site and have really good coverage, just like our Dstar system does. And then also in Cedar Grove, we have W2DGL on 445.525. Both of these repeaters, we're using in analog mode DCS54 for our PL, and we're running right now in auto, which says you can go either digital or analog, which we'll hear more about from Chris. Okay, so that's the end of my slideshow. We're going to turn it over to Chris, and we'll get rolling with his stuff. And Chris. And slideshow. And Chris. Okay. That's the right one. Yours looks just like my start one.
Yeah.
I did.
Thank everybody for coming. My name's Chris Wilson, N0CSW. I'm the National Sales Manager for Yaesu in North America. I also do all the System Fusion stuff down in South America as well. So how many people expected this to be a Dstar form? I think there's a few. Yeah, okay. Sorry for stepping on everybody's toes. I think there was some publication stuff that they got mixed up. So yeah, we're giving away a radio, so that's not a problem
again,
here.
If you want to hear Dstar stuff, come talk to me at the table.
Yeah. How many people are familiar with System Fusion? Does anybody in the area actually use System Fusion? Okay. Are there any repeater owners in the area that have a System Fusion repeater? Okay, so just about every presentation I give, it's 20 or more people, we have a couple of repeater owners. Currently in the United States, Yaesu has about 40% of the repeater market as far as all the repeaters out there that are amateur. Whether they're being used in System Fusion digital mode or not, we're currently the strongest supporting infrastructure in the United States right now for amateur radio. So we've come a long ways. We've sold several thousand of these repeaters across the United States. We keep selling more every day, so there's infrastructure out there to support this new digital technology. Just recently, we released a Wires X, which is our wide area internet networking system that was just released December 25th. And we have a new version of the software that if you have a newer repeater, you can connect what we call a Wires HRU 200 to the repeater. And we can now interconnect repeaters across the United States. One thing that's nice about Fusion, it doesn't require internet at the repeater site to create linking. So some of the other technologies such as DMR and Dstar require. You can have a remote node connected to the repeater, which will enable Dstar access. So I'll talk about that more in a minute here. What I'm going to start off with is a quick product overview of what's available from Yaesu. We have the least expensive radios out on the market as far as digital goes right now. This is a developing technology. We wanted to provide it to the community relatively low cost and try to get the radios out there and get people building more stuff for System Fusion. So we've already seen a few things pop up in the Fusion world. One device is the DV4 Mini. Northwest Digital Radios also come up with a device that allows you to use System Fusion and interconnect System Fusion and develop your own applications for the System Fusion protocols. So, quick product overview. We have a few radios out on the market, some supporting infrastructure, the DR1X, which I talked about. We are selling these repeaters for $600, tax and shipping included, so it's a heck of a deal. For the first year and a half, we sold them for $500, and that's how we got them out on the market. So we've flooded the market with repeaters. They're in every major city right now. You can find one with a digital mode enabled on it, a lot of wide area coverage repeaters. So if you do have a newer Yaesu radio and it's digital, chances are in the area somewhere you could find a System Fusion repeater. The first radio we came out with, the first two radios were the FT1 DR and the FTM 400 DR. We've since switched to the XD models, which have an enhanced GPS in them. They're a little bit more accurate and have a quicker time to fix. Our next release in the line was the FT991, which is an all-mode, all-band HF and VHF, UHF radio that has 6-meter in it. Has an integrated sound card in it. It has a integrated auto tuner and a color touchscreen. So it's a really nice radio. It's a ham shack in the box. The FTM 100 and FT2 DR were the next releases, along with the HRU 200. The HRU 200 is our internet linking device that will plug into any analog or digital Yaesu radio. Now, the analog radios you can't run Wires X digital on, but it is backwards compatible in the analog network into some of our other radios, such as an FT8800, 7800, and so forth. Any of the radios with the data jack in the back will work with the HRU 200. So it comes with both cables for the newer radios, which are 10-pin, and the older radios, which are 6-pin. You can also interface it to any other analog radio out there that you want. If you want to use a third-party analog radio, it is compatible with it. FT2 DR is a really unique radio. I'll get into that in a minute. It has a touchscreen on it that can also display images. So FT1 XDR, analog and digital, has APRS built into it. All of the System Fusion radios do have a GPS module in them. If you're running APRS, you can also do telemetry over our digital mode, which is really nice. You get real-time telemetry in our digital narrow mode, which can transmit voice and data at the same time. We'll talk a little bit more about those capabilities in a minute. We do have an MH85 A11U camera microphone. You can take snapshots and send digital pictures to people using that microphone, a really nice accessory. And those images can be displayed out onto the FTM 400 XDR's display as well as the FT2 DR. 400 DR is the world's first amateur color touchscreen radio. The radio on the front is touchscreen. It can be fully programmed from the touchscreen. It does have a memory card slot where you can store and retrieve memories from as well. APRS and TNCs built into this radio as well. The only radio that does not have a TNC in it and APRS capabilities is the FT991. So all these radios, we're starting to just go ahead and put the APRS stuff in it. We're putting, because we have the GPS modules in there anyways for C4FM digital. to do telemetry, so might as well just put the features in there. 991 I call the shack in a box. It's got everything in it you need: auto tuner, sound card, so if you have a signal link or a rig blaster, you don't need that anymore with this radio. You plug in one USB connection, you have a virtual serial port, and you have audio in, audio out going to the radio. One nice feature, it separates a rig blaster signal link from this radio. A lot of people are running them on them. I tell them, don't do that because you're actually cutting yourself a little bit short. You can run true FSK, AFSK through this unit. So if you want to run 300 baud packet, it's really, really efficient for a 300 baud packet out of the box. It's 100 watts all mode, all band throughout the bands, 50 watts on FM. 50 watts on UHF as well. If anybody here had the 897, you'd remember that you only had 35 watts coming out on the UHF side. So there's a few advantages to running the 991. It does have a color touchscreen on it. One of the nice features I like about putting the touchscreens on these radios are we can't add and remove buttons to radios these days. So if you want to put another button on the front of a radio, it's a hardware change. With the touchscreen radios, we just have to do a firmware change, and we can add features or move things around to make the radio easier to use, or add something new to the radio. So opens up a world of possibilities. All these radios are firmware updatable. The FT1, FT2, 400, and so forth all come with the cables that you need to do those software upgrades. In some cases, those cables can also be used for programming. If you like the popular RT system software, you've already got the cable to program the radio. 2DR is the first high-resolution touchscreen amateur radio. I've seen a few others pop up out on the market, on the Chinese market here recently. A lot of them are smartphone-based. They're not legal in the United States because they do have cellular devices inside of them that are not FCC certified. So that creates a few problems. I haven't been able to find one yet that is touchscreen or graphical touchscreen that is allowed here in the United States. So very unique radio, hit the market really, really hard. People are really enjoying the touchscreen and the direct input and the ease of programming on these radios. There's no more having to use the dial all the time to program the radio and strange keys to hit and things like that. Everything's in plain English right on the front of the radio, and it's very, very easy to navigate. This radio does have dual vocoders in it. One thing that you won't see on the FT1DR and the FTM400 is the ability to use digital on both VFOs. So this radio is the first in a line that allows you to do that. And I see Yaesu as we go down in the future having digital on both sides of the radio. So that is a benefit to having the 2DR. The 100 is the latest radio we came out with. It's a single VFO version of the FTM400 with a smaller display. It still does have the GPS in it. You can't use our camera microphones with it. It's the only System Fusion radio that you can't use the camera mic with, aside from the 991. Still has APRS built into it, still has a memory card slot for programming, and still can be programmed from the rear of the radio with the RT system software. So just a scaled down version, a couple $100 less. It's a really good radio. As I talked before about the repeater, the DR1X is a 50 watt repeater. It's, thank you, I appreciate it. It is dual band, so it's VHF or UHF. It can cross band unidirectionally, not bidirectionally. It can cross band from VHF to UHF or UHF to VHF. I have a lot of people using them as links in between relay systems. They work really, really efficiently for that. Very easy to program. It has a touch screen on the radio, so a lot of people running these things in emergency communications vans or as portable repeaters can change frequencies right from the front display. There's no programming software necessary to program the repeater. From start to finish, it takes about 20 minutes on average. We've had reported back to us through our installation program. We get a lot of feedback back from everybody. It takes about 20 minutes to install the repeater, to rack mount it, swap it out with an older repeater, and have it on the air, programming and everything. So very, very easy to sell these things, saying that you don't have to take any time, you don't have to learn any special software, buy any special programming software to put this repeater in. Everything's included right in the box except the duplexers and antenna system. The heart of the system is automatic mode select. I'll go into a little bit of detail about it. Not only are these repeaters dual band and digital, but they're analog as well. They have the ability to swap in between analog and digital. AMS also works on the client radios. That means whatever your radio is receiving, that's the mode it's going to set to. If it's receiving digital, it's going to go into digital mode. If it's receiving analog, it's going to go into analog mode. There are a few features on the radio that make it really easy to swap in between these modes, either with the press of a button or a couple clicks of the mic key. You can switch in between modes. You can set the radio to revert to the last mode it received and transmit on that mode, or you can have it revert back to the mode that you were currently running. So there are several different ways that we can set up AMS to work with these radios. So the repeater will detect if it's analog and digital, and it'll transmit either analog or digital. But it also has the capability of translating digital into analog and analog into digital. So there's several different modes you can remotely set the repeater to have it actually translate in between the different modes. So if you do have a digital radio and there are analog people that want to come into a conversation, you can set the repeater to a fixed FM output and have it automatically receive and translate between A and D to the output. Rhetorical slide. The ability that is really strong is to use whichever system best suits your needs. We have several different modes, such as digital narrow, voice wide. I'll go into those in a minute. The repeater will automatically pick that up and translate whatever mode that you're in. We do have a digital data mode that's 9,600 bits per second. With overhead, you're actually getting about 8,000 bits per second roughly out of it on estimation. So we're a little bit faster than Dstar, where I believe, and in some slides here, I believe it's around 840 bits per second that you actually are able to use in digital mode. So it's a little bit quicker. We're expanding on that system. Our engineers are looking right now into connectivity to allow this digital data system to work directly with your computer. So that's one thing that's being developed in Japan right now. We're not sure of a time frame of when this stuff's going to come out. And we've seen a lot of third-party stuff like the DV4 Mini that I've mentioned that allows some direct keying and some other stuff that people have been working on. So what I'm really looking forward to with Fusion are third-party applications that are going to be developed. I want to see a lot more kind of pop up from the community. We've seen a lot of that in Dstar, and with Yaesu and the WiresX network, Wires is going to kind of stay over to this side and be a Yaesu product. So there's a lot of potential that's popping up in the market with third-party applications right now. And honestly, when it comes to infrastructure, Yaesu wants to support that. We have several documents that are available to any developers. If anybody in this room wants to develop anything, let me know. I'll give you a card so that I can get you some information and you can work with our engineers to further develop your products. So we've been very, very open about our protocol, our modulation, and how System Fusion works. We published several documents that explain in technical detail how everything works. System Fusion was designed as an independent radio system. We had very little intentions of actually networking this product. When we put it out onto the market, we found out that people wanted to network it. This bottom line into story with all the other technologies out there, that's one of the benefits of digital. So as we've expanded, and here just recently, December 25th, we released the WiresX software, and all of our new repeaters are shipping with new firmware that allow you to connect WiresX directly to the unit. Any repeater that's out there now, as I mentioned, can use our new WiresX software we released and use a remote node such as an FTM 100 or 400 to connect into the DR1X and enable connectivity through WiresX. One other thing Yaesu had in mind when developing these products is firmware upgradability and cost. We wanted to build a unit that was inexpensive. That's one reason we didn't go with TDMA or some of the other solutions that are out there. It's because they're a little bit pricier. We were able to put better technology at a lower cost in these radios by going with C4FM and using FDMA instead of TDMA. Firmware upgradability throughout the life of these products. You can get firmware updates that enable new features, enhancements, bug fixes, and so forth are going to be freely available. So Yaesu is not going to charge for any of those. It's not going to cost you any more money. Another reason was resource management. Using FDMA and the high-speed data, we can actually push more features over this network, more features over the radios. So that's why we focused on that specific mode and we didn't go with some of the others. One other reason is if we were to go TDMA or do two-time slot TDMA was one thing that was requested by a lot of people. The problem is when you're running two-time slot TDMA, you have no analog. There's no way to do it. It's the way that everything runs when you have two time sources running like that. it's just not possible for us to swap in between analog and digital, especially when networked. So we went ahead and did FDMA, and it's brought the cost down on these radios. Some of you can see these FT1 DRs, the old version of this radio right here. They're running between 260 and 280 on the market right now for a radio that does digital APRS, has all the features that it has in it. It's an amazing price. Compared to other digital solutions, C4FM 4-level FSK and FDMA has a better bit error rate. Is anyone here familiar with what bit error rate is? All right. That's how much data we can lose before you start hearing the R2D2 sound.
I'm actually seeing a lot of bit error rate right now.
Yeah, are you? Okay. Well, is this microphone up here? People using the Wi-Fi. Okay, that's too bad. So once our signal degrades so much, or a certain amount, and we usually see about 15 to 20%, we start getting what's called artifacting in our audio transmission. And that's basically the vocoder's not able to get enough data into it to properly decode the voice audio. So with C4FM and using the AMBI 3000 codec, we've seen a great improvement in these products over GMSK and some of the other methods out there. I'm not knocking TDMA, I'm not knocking P25 or anything. Our solution is pretty much phase 1 P25. If you want to know what System Fusion is and you want to know some details about it, APCO has a lot of resources at apco.apco25.org. And you can look up Project 25 and look up the phase 1 specifications. We're just pretty much flopping a bit at the end of our transmission. One of the reasons for that, the FCC really doesn't want to see amateur radios go into the digital world, and I fully understand that. People can do a Mars modification to an analog radio, and older analog networks, we saw a lot of Part 97 radios going on to the commercial bands. So the FCC wisened up, and we decided to work with them. They said, well, if you're going to develop an amateur technology, make it amateur, and that's what we did. It wasn't that we were trying to cut anybody off as far as compatibility or not let you use our commercial equipment on our network. It's just a choice that keeps the commercial world happy with the amateurs and so forth, and it keeps our costs down and our liability down. And that's what this is all about, is providing a cost-effective radio to the amateur community. When we saw some of the other amateur digital technologies pop up, and especially getting into first starting with Moto Turbo. When I first started with it, we were buying $500 and $600 radios. They were incredibly expensive. I think my XPR 6550, when it first came out, was like $800. I was working for a Motorola dealer, and that was with my discount. So, keeping the cost down is what we're trying to do, and get the stuff out there onto the market. Couple of comparisons with Dstar. Bit rates, 9600 bits per second in our digital narrow mode with 3600 bits per second of forward error correction. We see 4800 bits per second with Dstar, about 1200 bits per second with forward error correction. That's why you're not hearing as much voice response in Dstar. The more data that you have, the more data that you can push over the transmission, the better it's going to for a sound. We're using a little bit newer vocoder, which allows us to do more. In the future, if we did decide to do something TDMA, if we decide to maybe go into the phase 2 P25 world, we can do that with the current vocoder we have. That means it's just a software update to your current radios that you purchase. You're not going to have to go out and buy new hardware if we decide to expand. So there's future expansion capabilities with this product through software updates. During your warranty period, Yaesu 100% supports any firmware updates you do. I have not heard of anyone bricking a radio yet running a firmware update. So the process that we have for actually performing the firmware updates pretty solid and works very well. Our radios, all of our radios do have a built-in GPS except the FT991. And most of the System Fusion radios that are going to pop out are going to have the built-in GPS with them. We do have APRS capabilities in all the radios. The 991's lacking some of this stuff right now. It does do digital telemetry through an external GPS, but we don't have the APRS software built yet for the 991. That might be a future firmware update that Yaesu is going to offer. No additional accessories or boards to buy. Any Fusion radios ready to go out of the box. It's going to support every feature that we have on our WiresX network, as well as connecting to other radios point to point. We do consume a little bit more bandwidth than Dstar is, about 6.5 kilohertz. On a service monitor, I actually see about 10. The advertised is 6.25. I see about 10 kilohertz out of it. System Fusion can either operate 20 kilohertz or 12.5, so we have narrow and wide FM capabilities. A lot of areas and a lot of repeater coordinators in the United States are requiring that you run narrow band now if you're running digital, so we did put that feature in there in the latest firmware update. It does allow analog coexistence, as I mentioned, with automatic mode select. We can still keep the analog guys in there, and I found with Dstar, when I set up my first Dstar repeater, I set up a rack just like Randy with everything in it in Joplin, Missouri, and I took up a 2-meter and 440 pair, and just really upset a few people in the area. The local club just kind of shunned me. I think I got kicked out for a while, I'm not sure, but they really didn't like the fact in a small community that I put in Dstar. And in these more populated areas, you see a lot more general acceptance of Dstar and digital-only technology, such as Moto Turbo. But when you get into a community where there may be 100 hams, 25 of them active, they're all using the same repeaters, you hear the same people every day, my Dstar repeater just didn't get keyed up. I ran it for a long time. 444.625 in Joplin, Missouri is up 1,000 feet right now on a DB420, and it gets more traffic than any repeater in the area, being an analog fusion hybrid repeater. So it's set to automatic receive fixed FM right now. That's the way I prefer to run it. I have a CAT controller on it, and through DTMF they can switch the repeater into any mode they want, either fixed digital, fixed analog, or they can set it to automatic receive, automatic transmit, so it can sit there and flip-flop between either analog or digital. Usable data speed in our data-only mode. After forward error correction, we have 4,800 bits per second as opposed to Dstar's 950, and actually I thought it was 850. It's 950 bits per second. So digital data transfer is a little bit faster. It's about 15 seconds for a VGA image that was our cameras take, which is 340 by 480. You can transmit a very nice image. We are using 4-level FSK instead of GMSK. And the reason we're doing that is just entirely because of data rates. We can fit 2 bits in the same spot where Dstar can fit 1 bit, so we're getting over twice the throughput in our transmissions. Internet's not required at a tower site to link. We do have the built-in cameras in the MH85s. Texting via keypad, I know some of the Dstar radios, this might be wrong, I know some of the Dstar radios have some type of capability to do that, and you can connect them through a phone now and stuff. So in all honest comparison, both technologies do have some type of direct input, but we do have it straight from the face of the radio. We do have touchscreen radios. That's one thing I keep pushing is firmware updates, and touchscreen means more features. And the full color LCD on the FTM400 and FT991. So I do see this is going to be something that our competitors are going to start picking up on. So I think that Yaesu is starting to put all these nifty color LCDs in the radios, and the cost of those LCDs and those modules has dropped. I see the other manufacturers probably in the future starting to do that. So hopefully we get a little bit of spin-off from that, because as much as I love amateur radio, I want to see more of this technology pop in. There are 4 different modes these radios can operate in. We have a voice data mode, which is known as digital narrow, which allows you to transmit telemetry and images along with voice. We have a full rate voice mode, which increases the voice response considerably, which is called our voice wide mode. We do have a full rate data mode, which is 9,600 bits per second, and of course our conventional analog FM mode, and these can all be ran either narrow or wideband. A few features I'm going to go through real quick, because I know we're probably running close on time here. How are we doing, Randy?
We've got another probably 10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay, because I want to do a little Q&A here. We have a digital group monitor mode. Group monitor allows you to connect in digital narrow mode and transmit voice, text, and telemetry. You join a group, you can get RSSI, which you see down here at the bottom. So you can actually see how far before a station is going to run out of signal. We have digital image transmission, which is our full rate data mode. Also for texting, we use full rate data mode. We have a smart navigation function, which I really like. This can be used in or out of group mode. If someone's transmitting to you, they have their GPS turned on, you're receiving telemetry information. You can store their location in the radio. All of our radios will give you a compass. They'll provide you with a heading of where that station last transmitted. So for emergency operations, this is a really, really nice feature. We have a backtrack function where you can also store your own location, such as a command post, and actually navigate back to that location. And really quickly, I'll go through the HRI 200 internet linking and wires. Everybody's interested in this. This is what we consider our advanced voice over IP wireless network, which is currently advancing. It does allow analog and digital over the network. It will translate between analog and digital, so it will convert A to D and D to A. It's very low bandwidth consumption, actually, compared to some of the other technologies out there. We do have rooms, which are similar to Dstar reflectors. They're the same thing. So there are reflectors out there. A lot of people have said to me recently that Wires doesn't have reflectors. Well, yes, we do. We have a news station function, which allows you to store images, text messages, and digital data and retrieve it directly from the radio. And, of course, we have Smart Search, Smart Access. You do not need to connect your Yaesu radio to the internet or run any firmware updates in order to see who's on the network, see which repeaters are connected. To connect to another room, another node, everything's done in real time over RF. So no updating of firmware or anything like that to get databases into radios. So just want to mention once again, we do have a full suite of APRS features in this radio, which are fully compliant with the 1.2 standards. We're working on some stuff right now to bring that up a little bit. So the APRS system is being looked into by Yaesu right now, and we're going to probably have some future expansion on that, of course, which will be a firmware update. We have a web portal if you want more information. Is at systemfusion.yaesu.com. There's a wealth of information on there. We have an FAQ section, a knowledge base, support forums. If you want to know more about System Fusion, you can connect here. You can also connect centrally to all of our social networking through this website. So there's a lot on there, and if you have a question you want to ask, you can go there after the presentation. To finish up here, I know we're running pretty short. Does anyone have any questions about System Fusion or any of the Yaesu products that I can answer today? Yes, sir.
How about the WireX system? How is that going to work now? Hooking it into your repeater and connecting it with another repeater?
Well, all you need to do is you have to have a PC at the site, so you hook up the PC and the HRI 200 to the back of the repeater, and you'll have an interface where you can connect to any other node or room on a Windows machine. Now, you can also use your radio to control the Wires X node. So you can search for other nodes and stations and connect to other nodes and stations from your radio itself. So there are several different ways to enable connectivity between the Wires X network and your client radio.
Do you actually need a computer hooked up to each one of the Wires X?
Each one of the nodes, yeah. So if you have a repeater or if you have a remote node that's connected to a repeater, you'd have to have a PC hooked up to that at this time.
You install directly Wires X directly to the internet.
Right, that's correct. Yeah, it's not a direct connection. It does require some type of a PC.
Yeah, but there's a ton of like mini ITX boxes out there.
Yeah, mini ITX. What I use, and it's a good 12-volt solution, are those little thin clients. They're a dime a dozen, and you can pick up like a 1.6 gig with 2 to 4 gigs of RAM, 2 to 4 gigs of flash for like $15 off eBay, and little 12-volt machine. Yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah, Chris, I do have a question. Just went to that point. There are also plenty of 12-volt ATX power supply modules that you can plug into that PC. So you don't have to worry about, how you're going to run that little PC. You put an SSD on it, and you're done.
Yeah, and most of them have everything you need in them. If you buy them used off eBay, they're about $15. You can get them brand new for about $100. They have these. You can find them brand new in the box.
Yeah,
so.
SSD, the mini ATX, the ATX power supplies that run 12 volts.
Yeah, all those things are cheap.
They're
Yeah.
Stuff.
Yeah.
You alluded in kind of different ways to that they're upgrading the PC functionality. You kind of mentioned earlier, and then you mentioned it in the context of the APRS functionality, which is essentially one way. It comes
Right.
out, doesn't go back in. So if I have my Windows tablet or my, heaven forbid, Android tablet, you know, please don't when I left out. Anyway, I'd like to be able to use that touchscreen to be able to enter messages and things like that. I'd like to be able to pretty much drive a lot of that PC-oriented functionality from a touchscreen tablet. And so in general, and also, by the way, the video, the picture conversion, or even sending my own media, you know, among friends, just facilitating that. You know, the third-party stuff will follow if you facilitate that access, that communication. So I got to really kind of push on you, like, talk to the folks in Nippon to get it done.
Oh, yeah, I fully agree. And our engineering department in Tokyo, I've been conversing with them a lot about those features. That's one of the main things I push with them. I said, we got to have that. We kind of have to have it. You already thrown in the one-way stuff. And what I've gathered right now is it might be a hardware limitation in the radios at the moment, so it might be a future product that supports that. But I'm really hoping they can just do something with the firmware and enable two-way communication. So they haven't gotten back to me yet and defined this is what's going to happen, this is what we need, or what we're going to have to do. But I'd say about once a week they get pushed. So, you know, and that's saying a lot if you've ever worked with Japanese engineering. It's
Yeah. God bless us.
yeah. Yes, sir.
Does the computer require Windows? Could it be a Linux-based computer?
It requires Windows. I do have some people running it on Linux through Wine right now. Some are running it through VirtualBox, so I've seen a couple of different ways to run it.
There's a suggestion, ultimately, if there's Linux support, then that makes a Raspberry Pi possible.
It does, yeah. And that's something that we brought up to them, and I'm not sure that the resources are in place right now for them to develop Linux software, but they definitely know about it. They definitely know it's in demand. So we get a lot of demands for that. One of the things I tell people to do is back on this Yaesu System Fusion web portal is jump on there and submit a FAQ request or submit a contact request and request that stuff. You know, and don't say I told you to request it. they don't like hearing that. They think I'm pushing them at that point.
Go to Android too?
Yeah, what's that?
They can do Android eventually, maybe?
We're hoping for, you know, a lot more connectivity through third-party devices. But once there's PC connectivity, and what Yaesu's always done in the past is anytime we put out a radio with PC connectivity, whether it's accessing the TNC directly like the FTM 350, we'll send a CAT manual, or, you know, we'll publish a manual with it on how to control it. I don't see them making anything proprietary when it comes to PC connectivity, and that's where System Fusion's really going to open up. As soon as they get that down and get that hammered down, that's going to be good. I've got some communication back from Tokyo Engineering that was kind of like hush-hush. They didn't want to tell me anything. When they don't want to tell me something, that means they're getting ready to do something. So yeah. They don't want the sneaky salesman going out trying to sell more radios. So, you know, that's
Facilitating that PC interface in a maximum mode will sell more products.
Oh yeah.
They need to understand that portal opens up lots of applications to people, which means that they're going to buy more repeaters and more stuff. Whether they buy wires Xboxes may or may not be in there.
Oh, I fully agree.
That third party thing, you hit it at the beginning of your talk, and that was the right answer.
Yeah, that's what I want to see is third-party development. Yeah, that's what we're pushing, and we know that we've seen it in Dstar when the DVAP came out, and I've had VPs at ICOM tell me, I asked him, I said, when the DVAP came out, were you worried you weren't going to sell more Dstar repeaters? He said, no, I'm glad I'm going to sell more Dstar radios. You know, if you sell one Dstar radio with every DVAP that's sold, that's a huge success, because we look at how many DVAPs have been sold. So that's what I look at as well. Yes, sir?
Do you foresee Bluetooth integration in the future for things like keyboards?
You know, that was actually brought up to me by the engineering department about a year and a half ago. I know that they're looking into that because they know the Bluetooth's there, and since, you know, Bluetooth 2.0 and some of the other stuff's popped up that we've put into our radios, they understand there's more potential. So they've seen that potential, and hopefully they act on it. But what I like to do is I like to push them with one group of things at a time. If they come out with PC connectivity first, I'm not going to complain about Bluetooth for a while. I'm just going to let them catch up and make sure that they develop a good product that's solid and stable. Yeah. Yes, sir.
What's going on with the power on the repeaters now? I've been told to not run it over 20 watts.
It depends on how much operation you're getting. We've seen people that typically have 3 or 4 hours of continuous duty. We recommend they don't run it on full power just because the repeaters aren't recovering fast enough to cool themselves. The repeater's amateur duty is what they first came out and called it, and what happens is the PA in the repeater actually sets its power back depending on heat. That probably should have been done off some type of duty cycle formula rather than heat, because it doesn't catch up enough. By the time it gets so hot and it's recycling itself and it's getting, it just doesn't work right. So what?
Fans don't shut up.
Yeah, they don't. I had one guy literally called me up. His repeater had caught on fire, and I said, "Well, what are you doing to it?" Well, they would have a 5 or 6 hour conversation every morning, and depending on how hot it got in the cabinet with the other equipment, it finally just smoked. So, and he burned a relay. It actually started smoking and stuff like that. So we'd never seen that before. We've only had it happen once. But we had to come back and say, okay, we need to firmly put a duty cycle on these just to make sure people are a little bit more aware. Most people run them at full power and don't have any problems. It seems to do pretty well for them. So we've adjusted some timer settings as far as the fans go, and we're doing a little bit more cooling. If you've seen the first generation, some clubs have bought a first generation repeater that have one of the new ones that just came out. There's a little bit of airflow change, how everything works in there. They've changed the way the fans work. They're continuous duty now. They're not, they're on all the time. They're not running based off of thermosistors, so it's a little bit different.
$500 special for repeater.
Until further notice. Yeah, it's 600. It's 600 now. Yeah, so it went up from 5 to 600, and that's just to help cover some of the cost of development for Wires X. The company is losing quite a bit of money on these repeaters.
What's the difference between one that was shipped 6 months ago and one that was shipped a couple weeks ago?
Since February, there's really been no changes. Before that, there was a fan with a thermosistor on it, and they've removed a couple of panels on the front of the radio inside the transmitter radio to provide more cooling. So if you want those modifications, you can send me an email, and I can send you that document that shows specifically what the modifications were. We found about 90% of the people don't need to perform the modifications. If everything's working good now, then you're fine. But yeah.
February was when February of 2015 is when they did the last modification?
That's correct.
Because you just said something new December 25th.
December 25th was the Wires X software release. Yeah, and a new firmware for the HRU 200. But I'm told I only have about 2 minutes left, so we do have an FT1 XDR we're giving away. Randy, do the honors.
Everybody has filled out one of these and
Yep. Make sure you get it in.
gotten one. I don't get one.
Yep. What's that? Huh? Yeah, I got one out the table. We'll do that. I appreciate it, though. Yeah.
We've got radios on display in the cafeteria. We've got lots of literature there.
Turn your mic back on. Turn your mic back on.
Yeah, brand new Yaesu hats over there.
The Yaesu hats are here, so on your way out, grab one of those. And if you have any Dstar questions, come see Scott or myself in our cafeteria area. Okay, waiting on one more.
And this is the latest radio. This has a 2.2 amp hour battery in it, new GPS module. Black version.
Sure, you don't get one. No. I've got 2 more coming. Okay.
Get it?
Take those.
Everyone got theirs filled out?
Get one more here.
Not one more?
And
One more, Randy. Oh, get 2 more.
Are they not coming for the next talk?
Thank you, sir.
Okay, get one more real quickly, and then we're gonna draw. I'm gonna let you do the honors.
Oh, well. All right. Let's see here. Richard Fisher. Oh,
Yay!
okay. There you go.
And like I said, come see us in the cafeteria, pick up literature. We've got
If you have
all
any
the
questions
radios,
about it,
everything for
let
both
me know.
Dstar and Fusion.
All right.
Yep.
Chris, welcome to the Great South Bay Amateur Radio Club.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Do you have a card?
Yeah, let me get one for you real quick.
Because they've been talking about wires, and I'm not sure if he knows all the